Intermittent fasting has become very popular in recent years, and many of our TMS viewers have written in asking our own Kyle Buchanan to break it down.
All right, you asked and you're about to receive. Here is Kyle now. He joins us to talk all things fasting. Kyle, good morning. Good to see you.
Good morning, you too.
I guess let's just start with a simple definition of intermittent fasting. Exactly what is it and what are some of the benefits?
Okay, so intermittent fasting is an eating pattern that alternates between periods of eating and fasting. So essentially, it's when you eat rather than what you eat. And in terms of benefits, weight loss and easier weight management are the big ones we hear about. And the reason largely has to do with calories. You know, when you shorten your eating window, you tend to consume less daily calories overall without thinking about it as much, especially compared to traditional calorie restrictive diets where you're looking at every single meal. So it can be easier for some people. It's also associated with improvements in blood pressure, inflammation is a big one, brain health as well. So there's a lot of potential pros if it is, right for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. What should you consider before you start to fast?
Okay, so there's a couple no's. So if you're pregnant or breastfeeding, it's a no-go. If you have a history of eating disorders, it's not necessarily a no. You just want to really approach with caution, consider working with someone. And if you are on medications, especially blood sugar meds, you want to consult with your healthcare practitioner because dosing might need to be changed. Lastly, fasting can be a little bit more tricky for women just because of hormonal fluctuations, and a lot of the fasting research, unfortunately, has been done on men. So it's not to say it's not beneficial, it's just to really find a way in that works for you and your body.
All right, so you're going to take us through a few different ways that we can embark upon a intermittent fasting journey?
Absolutely. We're embarking. So there's a lot of different ways people do it. Some do a 24-hour fast, once or twice a week. Some do alternate day fasting where it's every other day. Some do modified fasting or the 5-2 method. This is where you eat normally 5 days out of the week, and then 2 days out of the week, you consume 500 calories or less. It's a little more tricky. And then we have something like the 16-8 method, which is more common and what I'll dive into.
Yeah, that's the one I do a lot.
That's the one you do. We've talked, I do occasionally.
Yeah,
absolutely. So that's where you have an 8-hour eating window and you fast for 16 hours. Now, technically, this is actually called time-restricted eating. And intermittent fasting is reserved for longer fasts. So if you want to say, but people use them interchangeably, but if you want to sound cool at a party, bring it up, right?
Yeah.
So for this, you find what 8-hour eating window works for you. Maybe it's 10 to 6, maybe it's 11 to 7, 12 to 8. Whatever works for your schedule. The one note I would say is that there is some evidence that you will get the most benefits with an earlier eating window because this aligns more with your body's circadian rhythm. You also tend to be more insulin sensitive in the earlier parts of the day. Not for everyone, but it is just something to consider going into it.
What can you consume in the fasting portion?
And that's a big question, right? So when I'm not eating, what can I eat? And the answer is magical. It is essentially, technically, anything that has 0 calories. So water, tea, coffee. With coffee, there's some debate as to whether caffeine can break a fast.
What about cream and milk in your coffee?
Cream and milk, I would say cream if you're going to, like a little bit of cream, but ideally you're doing black. Carbonated water is okay as well.
Yeah.
You might hear that bone broth is okay, but bone broth contains protein, which will break a fast, so you want to save that for your eating window primarily.
Okay.
But with your water, with whatever liquids you have, you can add a little bit of salt or sugar-free electrolytes to your liquid, especially if you find you get lightheaded.
Okay, just in our final minute here, do you have any final tips for those that are interested in trying this?
Yes, so a few things to keep in mind. One, you don't have to start with a big fast. You don't have to go right to 16-8. Starting with a 12-hour fast between dinner and breakfast, a few nights a week is a great way to go. Work your way up. Second, the big one, your body likes variety. You do not need to intermittent fast 7 days a week, 365 days a year. In fact, it can be better if you don't. So play with the time frame, change it up. Some days do less, some days do more. Find what works for you. And 3, ideally, during your eating window, you are eating nutrient-dense foods, especially that first meal of the day. How you break your fast can impact how you feel like the rest of the day. But it can be useful if it's right. Like anything Shahzadi made, fantastic.
Right.
Fantastic. Eat
As
that.
always. Yeah.
Yes.
All right, Kyle will be back for another edition of the Kyle File, so be sure to DM him your health and wellness questions at It's
Kyle B. It's Kyle B. on Instagram.
It's Kyle B. Thanks, Kyle.
Thanks, you too.